The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
That is Adrian Noble, and here it comes. The kick, connects.
Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
You know, the more I watch Indy play, the less worried I am for that game, because, my goodness, my biggest concern this entire time has been, how is the Eagles team going to stop, these dominant running backs? And yet, Jonathan Taylor isn't having a bad season, but, the Colts as a whole are having, I guess you would call it a bad season. I know that's a weird claim to make, seeing as they beat the Chiefs, but, my goodness, is it they're barely scratching by in all these games, they tied with the Texans, they lost to the Jaguars, and they barely beat the Chiefs by 3, and it's not looking as scary to me anymore. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen are clearly looking like the front runners for MVP, and if both men keep these performances up, I kind of suspect Josh Allen's going to take the MVP, just because the voters will probably be like, let's give it to the guy who's yet to get an MVP rather than give it to the guy who has won it already. But, both men are having phenomenal seasons so far. I know it's only the beginning of the season and turnarounds can happen, but it is crazy to think, or at least to me, that we spent this entire offseason hyping up the AFC West and how crazy the football games of any of those teams are going to be, just for all the teams to be mid, with the exception always being, of course, Kansas City. The Raiders are 0-3, the Chargers are 1-2, and the Broncos are miraculously 2-1 despite their terrible play calling. We all were calling a bunch of these teams Super Bowl contenders, and yet you have the Broncos out here with Russell Wilson, who just, he's been playing decent, but my goodness, has their play calling been terrible, and they've barely been scratching by in these games. What did they beat the 49ers by? Wasn't it 11-10 or something like that? Yeah, 11-10. I don't know. That whole division is pretty insane to me, that there's just it's crazy to think that they were the big old news of the offseason with all these signings and trades they were making, and yet their teams so far have been pretty terrible. Of course, it's the beginning of the season. It's only week 3. Maybe we can see some turnarounds, but if we're by week 5, week 6, and things aren't looking good, maybe it's start time to hit the panic button. Joe Burrow finally decided to make his return against the Jets. Seriously, how did y'all lose to the Cowboys without Dak? And then, they did well against the Jets, but that's to be expected. It's the Jets, But it is just it is crazy that some of these teams have been having that sort of a rust, I guess you can say, and it's taking them a while to fully establish themselves. But again, it's only the beginning of the season, so a lot of people or a lot of teams shouldn't be worried as much. And just some really good games all around this week. The Jaguars blew out the Chargers, which was very surprising. Dallas somehow keeps winning without Dak Prescott, which is pretty crazy to think about. There's some controversy going around the league in regards to the Dolphins-Bills game, because I don't know, later they came out and were like, it was a back injury, but when he first went out, they were like, it's a head injury, he's going in for concussion protocol, and then next thing you know, he's back in the game. So league's investigating that, because that's kind of shady, that it was, at first it was it's a head injury, you got to go into concussion protocol, and then now it's no, he went in for a back injury. But let's get into the game that matters here on this podcast. So my biggest complaint so far with the Eagles have been the lack of pressure and sacks. I talked about Gannon needing to play Hassan Riddick in the correct position and role, and what a difference that makes, huh? 9 total team sacks, and the breakdown individually goes as follows. Brandon Graham got 2.5, Hassan Riddick got 1.5, Fletcher Cox got 1.5. Josh Sweat got 1.5. TJ Edwards and Javon Hargrave each got 1 as well. An absolute monster game from the front seven. They completely collapsed Washington's pocket and rattled Wentz. The front seven made Carson Wentz as uncomfortable as me when I have to order my own food. Wentz was held to 211 yards. Much of it came in the second half and in garbage time, and he had no passing touchdowns or even rushing. Washington's sole touchdown came from a run. Loved the consistency from this defense. After a week with multiple interceptions, they had none here, but held most of the receivers in check, with the exception, of course, being Terry McLaurin going for 102 yards. Now, another issue that I've had with the Eagles, and it's consistently every season that I've had this issue, is that we rarely see games like these past two where both the offense and the defense show up. It's like we've seen plenty of times, that the defense shows up and has a monster game just for the offense to struggle, or vice versa, And much like last week, this game was not like that, However, it looked to be like that in the beginning. The first quarter saw both teams kind of struggle to get it going on offense, but the absolute beauty of this game was the commander saying, we're going to shut down this team's main weapon, the rushing attack. The running backs couldn't really get it going, and Jalen Hurts rarely got scrambling lanes. Now, in the past, this would have led to the offense completely shutting down. But we have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown now. Jalen Hurts said, you're going to take away the rushing? Cool. Let me show you the absolute dime pieces I can hand out. 340 yards and 3 passing touchdowns on the day. Devontae Smith with 169 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown with 85 yards and a touchdown. Absolute monster performance in the second quarter for all three men. Smitty had some insane catches this game. He proved his physicality despite his size, straight up mossing his defenders on multiple occasions. AJB should not be moving as fast and be as elusive as he is at that size, but yet he was just getting around those defenders like it was no one's business. And Hurts is slowly proving that he has that deep passing ability in him. That pass play to Devontae Smith at the end of the second quarter is one of the most beautifully thrown and placed balls I've seen. And it's just kind of insane that, we're seeing it in front of our eyes, It's like everyone who has talked about Jalen Hurts many times, they're not speaking negatively on him in the sense of we Eagle fans want him to prove us wrong. Me personally, I've always believed in the guy coming out of college, but when he got drafted to the Eagles, because we had Wentz, I just didn't think that was the best fit for him. I was like, why are the Eagles taking him? They don't need to take him, And then every year after, it's been I believe in this guy because I know his work ethic. He just needs to prove in these games. And, each and every season, he's done nothing but improve, And, that's just sort of the thing is, many times people see it as how would you describe it? Many people see Philly fans as hateful and all that. But, at the end of the day, it's just we want to be proven wrong, there's no such thing as a gotcha moment with Philly fans because we're actively looking for these players to prove us wrong, And now it is only the beginning of the season, so, this is something that needs to be consistently done over the season. That's the kind of thing. And, that's kind of the annoying part is that people already are discrediting, the team by saying we've played terrible teams, but yet, multiple people predicted losses. They were like, oh, Justin Jefferson is going to torch and expose the defense. Shut down by his father, Darius Slay. By the way, I hope y'all realize that despite saying this, I'm a big Justin Jefferson fan and have been since he was coming out of college. That's why it stung extra hard when the Eagles passed on him in the draft. Wentz has been playing crazy. The Eagles have to watch out. Like a game of Smite, that man was shut down. Do the Eagles have a relatively easy schedule on paper? Yes, but you can't fault them for winning the games they're supposed to, If they had lost against Washington, against Detroit, lost here against... I meant to say Minnesota, yeah. If they lost to Detroit, if they lost to Minnesota, if they lost to Washington, if they lost any teams, people would have been like, oh, how'd you lose those? You were predicted to win. It's but then when they win, it's oh, you only played... It's only because you played an easy team. What do you want them to do? Lay down and lose just because it's an easy team? No, these are games we're supposed to win. No one gets mad at the Chiefs when the Chiefs go out and beat a team like Houston. It's like you're supposed to beat the easy teams. And the one valid criticism that I will agree with is that they won't continue to win games if they continue to let this one flaw continue. And Eagles, I hope you're listening to me. There are 4 quarters to a game. The game does not end at halftime. You need to continue to have the same energy for all quarters. Thankfully, this season, the Eagles have yet to start off a game playing down to their opponent's level. However, once they've gone up in the game, that's when they decide to relax and take their foot off the gas. The play calling gets more conservative than my mom cutting a birthday cake for a party. You cannot play like this against the better, more experienced teams who will know how to take advantage of such an opportunity. Teams like Green Bay, Pittsburgh, I'm telling you, Kenny Pickett will be starting by the time we play that game. Tampa Bay, and if you truly view this as a Super Bowl team, you cannot do this against Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Miami. I need this team to be more aggressive in the second half. You took the chance on 4th down to score at the end of the second quarter. Meanwhile, the second half comes around and it's screenplays and checkdowns on 2nd or 3rd and long. I'm happy with this win, but I also want to be happy with this season. And us as Eagles fans won't be happy with this season if we continue playing games like this where we do well in the first half and then, we're just like, oh, well, essentially, since we're up, let's just stat pad in the second half, but also not score any points, not even field goals. That's the craziest part to me. Not even field goals are being scored. It's like we're just getting completely just straight up, 4 and out. Is that the phrase? I forget. I've played a lot of Madden. Yeah, I forget what the phrase is. But, it's like so many times we just go out there and it's like we just go out there because we feel we have to. Like we have to just kill the time. But then it's like we keep giving the other team opportunities by not capitalizing on our time on the field. As far as Jacksonville next week, I'm very worried. I know I've said that the previous 2 weeks. I was worried about this week because of how Wentz has been playing. And I have similar worries for Trevor Lawrence. Under Doug Peterson, Lawrence currently has 772 passing yards on the year with a 6-to-1 touchdown ratio. They beat the Chargers convincingly this week, and so I'm a bit worried. I still believe this is a game we can win. This will be a game of aggressiveness, though. Set the tempo from the start. Show you aren't afraid to go to either form of the offense while not prioritizing one over the other. Send that pressure from the very beginning and make sure, just like Carson Wentz, Trevor Lawrence is as uncomfortable as my family is when they see me eating bolillo without anything on it. But with that being said, thank you all for joining for another episode of Game Day. As always, remember, many things in this life may seem impossible, but if you fight for your dreams will fight for you.